Hello, boils and ghouls. It's your old pal, John Kassir, the voice of the Crypt Keeper. And I want to welcome my good fiends of the Horror Heals podcast. Is horror good for mental wellness? But of course it is.
Welcome back to Horror Heals.
I'm Kendall.
And I'm Corey.
One of the things we hear all the time is, why do you watch horror? Doesn't life have enough scary things already?
And our answer is usually yes, exactly.
Horror lets us face fear on our own terms,
which makes today's guest a perfect fit. Filmmaker Shal talks to us about Control Freak, a body horror film built around a simple idea that somehow becomes absolutely terrifying. An itch you can't stop scratching.
Underneath all the creepy imagery and the practical effects is something surprisingly relatable. Anxiety, perfectionism, family expectations, the feeling that if you can just keep pushing, just keep working, everything will somehow be okay.
Shal talks about why horror is uniquely suited to explore those ideas. Audiences come expecting scares, which gives filmmakers permission to sneak in bigger conversations about identity, mental health, and the things that keep us awake at night.
We also get into giant creature effects, filming on a tight budget, why original horror is thriving right now, and why seeing an Asian woman at the center of a horror film matters.
Plus, we discover that Shal's childhood trauma came courtesy of The Shining,
which immediately made him one of us.
We also spend an unreasonable amount of time talking about The Exorcist, our breakfast room display, and the kind of horror collections that make visitors slowly back toward the door.
Their loss.
Absolutely.
Is horror good for mental wellness?
Of course it is. Here's our conversation with Shal. Hey, Shal, welcome to the Horror Heals podcast.
Hey, how y'all doing? Thanks for having me.
Excited to talk to you about your career as a filmmaker. You know, Kendall and I are obsessed with horror movies, have been since we were kids, and we love unique voices in the world. You know, like we love all different genres. But before we get into that, how do you feel about our sort of mission of getting the word out that horror and horror movies and culture is actually good for our mental wellness?
I think it's really relevant. Just psychologically too, I was thinking a lot about it. This is the first like straight up horror movie I've made, but I've always liked it. And I also feel like I feel lucky to be in this space now because it kind of goes in this waves. And with the state of filmmaking it where it is right now, I feel like for a while, horror has been the genre where you can actually explore subjects a little bit deeper. And there's something about like, I take this inception model sometimes when I'm making a film where it's like you try to kind of like incept this idea into people's heads while keeping it very entertaining. And I think horror as a genre is fundamentally built like that, where it just allows you to tackle greater themes and deeper concepts in an easier way because the framework is already there. Like the audience knows what they're going to expect. Like they're going to be scared or it's going to be intense, but it allows you to kind of like bleed in these deeper themes or questions or ideas that you want to explore as a topic. And I think a lot of that can be very healing when, you know, properly used. And then obviously there's just like the catharsis angle, but that's sort of just my own personal window into, I think, a similar concept.
Yeah. So one, I just want to say it's a kudos to you. You know, we rarely see an Asian woman as the lead in a horror movie. And so it's just to have that representation out there is so important. We're all about diversity here.
Great.
So what are the challenges of going into a flick like Control Freak?
I think there's similar challenges to most films, and it always comes down to money and time. So this one, those are both challenging, but I would say the time was the most challenging part of this one. You know, we had 28 days to shoot it, and we had a big monster, animatronics, some gore, some location stuff, some fake underwater stuff, a ton of stunts, ton of visual effects with not a ton of money. So it was all, I think the time was definitely the biggest constraint, figuring out all this, the insane headache of figuring out a schedule with a character that's visually deteriorating over an hour and 40 minutes. So even just figuring out Kelly's makeup schedule could be an insane headache. We had to do some very hilarious and ridiculous creative scheduling things to make it all work. So that was definitely, I would say that was the biggest challenge, was the scheduling.
I love that you included animatronics in this. It's practically a lost art. My grandfather was an amateur filmmaker, and he would do Super 8, and he would do it frame by frame. And he taught me how to do that. Like he had like movie magic. Like I still don't know exactly how he did this. It was something with fishing wire, but it was like he sets a wallet down, it opens, and the money is going up the fishing line, explodes into clouds. Like all the money is like exploding.
Wow.
So and this is he did this back in the 70s. So can you talk a little bit about using like practical stuff in your movie?
Sanchi, this guy Stanley White was playing the Sanchi monster, and so one arm he controls himself, and his other arm is controlling the head, and then there's a puppeteer controlling the jaw, and then there's like another actor behind him, or sometimes 2 or 3 actors behind him playing the other limbs, and then another puppeteer like controlling that giant arm. So it's like this whole, they all have to kind of like move as one, and it's hard to make it look good. You need to keep it dark. You need to have the right movement. Like the big arm was probably the biggest challenge because it didn't really have like an articulated joint. But I'm pretty proud of how, all the different departments were able to, we had a really great team, just production design, the lighting of it, obviously the actual performance of it. And then the fact that they built such a great articulated jaw. The head, I think the head looks pretty good close to the head, which is pretty cool. So yeah, that was like part of it.
There are definitely themes of anxiety and dread in there. Is that something that you personally relate to? I suffer from anxiety, and I think a lot of people in the horror community do.
Yeah, definitely. I have a lot of those sort of like, I kind of itch myself a lot. I itched myself a lot more after making this fucking movie. My God, it just became a thing. But yeah, definitely, there's a lot of, anxiety baked into the film, like the anxiety of having to perform on this big level, of having like a good life, of putting all these things together, of what you project out into the world versus who you are inside. And also, I mean, maybe this wasn't, I don't know how much this came across, but also just trying to kind of hold on to what you've already built. Kind of, I think Val has a sense where, at least in my head, where she's come so far. She came from poverty. She came from a pretty tough family life, and now she really has it together to a degree, and she wants to keep that. So there's that anxiety of it all kind of slipping away, which does happen to her. Yeah, a lot of layers of that for sure.
Do us a favor, don't scratch your beautiful head of hair. This is coming from 2 bald men.
That's how it happened, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Too much scratching.
Mine was probably bleaching.
Yeah, I think we tortured our hair when we were in high school. A lot of different colors and bleach and stuff, and so
not smart.
No,
not smart.
No, so now we're paying for it. So I think we're at an interesting time for horror films. The Oscars were recently happened, and horror was definitely rewarded there. And even though a movie like Sinners has got a huge budget, it has that indie feel too. So it's not using any kind of existing characters or anything like that. And cross genres and everything. I think people have seen that musical sequence time and again. How do you feel about the state of horror today, horror movies?
I thought Sinners was pretty cool. I thought Weapons was really cool. Yeah. I really liked Weapons, and I'm glad that these guys are getting money to do some weird shit. And I'm even happier that people are paying to see it. Like, that's exciting. I honestly, when I first was getting into film, I wasn't ever really planning on going the horror path, but after making one now, and not only like the joys of making it and like the benefits of making it, but also just the fact that there is an audience that's receptive to it right now is really, really cool. Especially, when our industry is going through such massive shakeups and changes over the last 10 years, and it's only going to get crazier. But I also like that, I guess Weapons they both have like a darkness to them. I also kind of like that. I felt like there was this phase where kind of like the Game of Thrones era where everything was just like so dark and like kind of negative. I actually kind of feel like these newer horror movies shine a light on something. I don't think they have like a playfulness to them. They don't feel as pessimistic necessarily, which is also kind of a fun part of the trend now I see in some of the horror stuff. It's not as doomsday-y, or it's at least has like a playfulness. I felt like Sinners and Weapons are incredibly playful films, just despite their subject matter, which I also think is cool.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's definitely some laugh out loud moments in both movies, and I think that's important. I like that in horror. It doesn't have to always be gloom and doom. And I'm curious, what do you think, because we're obviously living through insane times in the world, what do you think the horror community reaction, like the horror filmmakers reaction to this is going to be? Is it going to go down that gloom and doom path, or is it going to go the opposite direction?
I think maybe it will go down the I feel like maybe the instinct is to go down the doom and gloom path, but I also think that when the world is so fucked, like we have less of an appetite for that, for that specific idea. But definitely, I mean, if you're talking about anxiety, like the anxiety of annihilation of the species is pretty big. Yeah, I'm not sure though. I don't really have a good predictor for that because it's also just like, so there's so many layers of what's going on and where people sort of find their issue that they care about. That's what's been kind of interesting to me without even going fully political. What's been interesting to me recently is how much bad stuff is out there and what people decide to latch on to, where that bad stuff is and what other bad stuff they accept, and sort of where morally you find yourself in a situation where like you have access to so many terrible tragedies. Like which one is the one that you're going to put I'm kind of thinking these days, like there's always like a bigger fish kind of, like there's these bad things and there's like these worse things and then there's the even worse things after that. I feel like personally that's like territory I'm kind of interested in to explore with the film. Just what level of evil you can accept when there's like an even greater evil. Now that we have like true potential existence, now we have something that could actually kill all of us, like realistically, where like smart people are like, oh yeah, it could totally happen. Then where does your morality shift when it's like species ending?
We're agnostic / atheist over here, but end of days kind of stuff. It's like it's like when that becomes reality, like where's your brain go? Like where do you find hope and joy?
Yeah. It's tricky.
And we're not overtly political on either of our podcasts, but it's you almost have to talk about things these days. Otherwise you just, yeah. So as someone who lived in Minnesota, like how did you feel about what happened there recently? And is that kind of inspired any kind of storytelling for you?
Oh yeah. I mean, I actually try to never post any politics on social media because I find it annoying. But I was like one of the few times I posted because I felt like I had like some message of hope or like some connecting with people because after Alex was killed, I was so angry. And so, that was one of the few times I actually expressed my feelings because I felt like I had something to say in the moment. But yeah, I mean, it's fucked up. It's terrible. It's a really evil thing that's going on. And it's still going on. It's actually gotten a little bit better. And I was talking to my mom, there's a lot of community organizing coming together, and you're seeing a lot of the better aspects of society that when people can come together against that kind of stuff. But yeah, I thought it was fucked up.
And it's ultimately ended up being inspiring, but it was also sort of triggering. So I was just in the Atlanta airport this past weekend, and it was, I'd never seen anything like it. Just the lines of people just like going, just rows and rows. And then, of course, ICE is all over the place, and people are covertly snapping photos of them and stuff like that, and it's just, but it was stressful at the time, but reflecting on it, like everybody was so chill and cool. Like people that have been waiting there for 4.5 hours. I didn't see anybody getting belligerent or irate or anything like that. It's like, okay, we're in this situation. And, I've seen stuff at the airport when it's not crazy times, like people being jerks, so it's like, wow, maybe we can, come together and just be relaxed and chill and, and get through this because, this is all, it's like they want that footage of riot or something at the airport and it wasn't there. There were people playing classical guitar in the background. It was like, okay, all right. I think maybe humanity has hope after all.
I think we really just need to start talking to each other. And I think the longer it goes on, the more you need to realize that, at least for me, which is also just a very useful thing as a writer, and a creator in general, is like you really need to be able to get into the perspective of a villain or a serial killer, or like, some horrifying character and see where they're coming from. And there's clearly like massive appeal on both sides of these issues. And so the guys that we don't like, they're drawn to something that's beyond just like the base or instinct. There's got to be some level of connection or some kind of hurt or pain or longing to belong. There's tools in there that we can use and explore. But if we don't take that viewpoint very seriously and understand why millions of people can embrace it, then I don't see a way out, really. Like the new projects I'm working on, I'm really exploring that yet. Personally, like the issues that are concerning me or like that are interesting to me are more like just like more moral than political at the moment. Like they coincide. But yeah, none of my stuff right now is about a police state or anything like that.
Right. But it's a good time to explore morality because you got to wonder, like, where are some of these people's morality? Where did it go?
I heard that Manosphere doc was really good. I was curious to see that. I like the idea of in-depth exploration of something like that without a lot of judgment. I feel like that's something that's very useful. So if I was going to make a political movie, it would probably be from those people's perspective in a way that wasn't like, ideally wasn't like super divisive. It would be like shocking or controversial, but it wouldn't. There's something about there's something about not like your stance being a little bit nuanced that can do a lot more, pushing things into a more even territory, even though it feels like we're on the brink, like war. So,
yeah. So let's go back a little bit. What was young Shal's first exposure to horror?
I saw The Shining. I think I was like 10, and I couldn't go in a bathroom without pulling back the shower curtain for 5 years. That scene is seared into my brain as like the scariest scene ever. And I think for most people, when you ask them what the scariest movie is, you're actually asking them like, what is the movie you saw at your youngest age that you could actually comprehend? And yeah, so I remember seeing The Shining way back in the day, and that just blowing my mind. And then I had this like one of my best friends growing up, this girl Emma in Minnesota. She loved horror movies, so we would watch like all the Halloweens and the Screams and all that. So I always enjoyed them as more like popcorn movies, but honestly didn't even take them that seriously beyond like a handful of them that I really loved going into college. But yeah, it was just the scene of Shining with the shower and the woman coming out. It's the worst thing I've ever seen.
I don't remember how old I was when I first saw The Shining, but because it's a mindfuck, especially that the last 20 minutes of the movie is just insanity.
It's so crazy.
Kendall and I both, for whatever reason, our earliest kind of thing that we remember was both like when our parents were watching the TV version of The Exorcist, like when The Exorcist first was shown on TV, and we snuck, down the hall, and Kendall was behind the couch, like watching. I didn't even see it; I could only hear it, but I could hear like the demonic things happening. And I'm like, "What is this?" I mean, it warped us. But now, when people ask, "What's your favorite horror movie?" we say The Exorcist. We've got an Exorcist display in our breakfast area. So.
As you do.
What's in the display?
So we've got a bust of Reagan in full demon mode. Yeah. And we've got like little miniature props, original artwork from our good friend Brad that he did. He does this really cool thing where he'll take the novel of a horror movie and he'll do art on the actual page. So, and then he did this other thing where it was like black paper that he's like scratches out, and then so the art is black and white, but he's got the poster image of the priest like looking at the house.
Oh, cool.
And then our page is like Reagan floating above the bed. It's just
it's awesome.
And then we've got a couple of dolls. Yeah. We've got a piece of the stone stairs.
Like what are the stone stairs again?
When that he falls down at the end.
Oh, yeah.
So we're a little bit obsessed. And I was fortunate enough in college to be able to walk up that staircase.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Were there any horror directors or horror adjacent directors that inspired you to get into filmmaking?
Kubrick and The Shining, obviously. The Shining was probably the biggest one, but it was more 2001. I was more like a sci-fi guy. It sounds so pretentious, but it was one movie that really struck me when I was like, I went through a very pretentious phase from 15 to 18. I was working at this video store called Discount Video, and they had like thousands of VHS tapes. So I was just watching so many goddamn movies. And one movie that stood out to me was Carl Dreyer's like Vampire. It's from like the 20s. Have you seen that one?
I've seen clips of it. I don't think I've seen the whole thing.
Early sound film, and it's so crazy. Like over 100 years old, I think now. But it was just the use of shadows. There's a scene where he's like in this weird trance and he's in a coffin. The main character is this dream. It's very trippy movie. It's insanely trippy. There's a vampire. There's this man who comes to this town. There's all these other weird ghost figures in the movie. It's kind of a retelling of Dracula in a way. But then there's a sequence where he's in this coffin and his eyes are just open in this coffin covered in flowers. And they attach the camera to the top of the coffin while he's being carried. So it's like you can see the space below it. It's like overhead shot at a slight angle. And it's him just being carried in his coffin. And it was just such vibey imagery. And the whole movie just had so much style to it. And it was just, that movie was a big influence to me because it's like, man, they were doing such awesome, innovative stuff like 100+ years ago.
We definitely encourage people to go back and seek out those early films because, like, I can't imagine the mindset as a filmmaker and the creepy ass imagery that comes out of that. I mean, it's nightmare inducing stuff.
And not knowing what it's going to look like at all, too, which is such a modern convenience we have. I guess people still shoot film, but like when you don't shoot on film or you just have the image already, but just the fact that they were doing over cranking, just the level of experimentation back then, I find very inspiring. And so I sometimes go back to those periods or even later on just to see the levels of innovation that people go to. So that was pretty influential for me.
Shal, have you attended any horror conventions?
I'd be down. I wish the problem with Control Freak, it was straight to Hulu. So we didn't really have a festival run that wasn't built into it. I'd have loved to go to Fantasia or Fantastic. I've always wanted to go. I have applied with other films and not gotten in. But yeah, those must be fun, right?
Yeah, I think you definitely find your people there, and it would be a nice break from the insanity that's going on. And there's some really good ones here on the East Coast. There's several in New Jersey. Go as a guest and just experience, like, the community is amazing. Like, it's from infant dressed up as Pennywise the Clown to grandma in a wheelchair who we can't wait to meet, Jason Voorhees, and everywhere in between. So diverse. And just people having conversations that would probably never have conversations or have a reason to. And it's just, the vibe there is electric. It's so positive. So I definitely encourage you to go, especially if the horror bug has bit you, because we do need voices like yours out there making horror stuff.
What's the top one in Jersey I should go to?
Monster Mania is fantastic. And there's one that's just like New Jersey Horror Con. I think it's happening next month. But Monster Mania is in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. They do another one in Pennsylvania, but they do two. There's one in August.
Fun. This is cool.
So what's bubbling around in your brain right now that's horror adjacent that we might see?
I'm working on this like Norwegian horror movie called Earworm, because my wife is from Norway. So I'm working on a film there about like a kind of an underwater entity and a whale researcher recording something underwater, and spiral imagery and just an exploration of pain and the links that we'll go to avoid pain, to how that factors into our life and what a life would be like without pain and how important pain is. And then I'm also really into rock climbing. I do a lot of trad climbing, go out to Yosemite or Red Rocks and try to, as much as I can. I'm a father now too, so I don't do a ton of climbing trips recently, but I still fit them in. So I wanted to do like a horror movie about a couple struggling to conceive, and they're both former like rock climbing professionals, and they go out into the wilderness and come across a younger couple and a child that they idolize or envy or see a different version of their life, and they may or may not be like immortal monsters of some kind. I haven't quite figured out yet. But I feel like a rock climbing horror movie would be really cool.
Yeah.
And to use that. So I've been scheming for a while, like how to make filming climbing dynamic, because it's very slow, but it's very, very scary when you're doing it, when you're up there. And if you could capture that in a good way, take that energy from free solo and put it into a horror movie and have a chase element to it, and not have $1 million.
Love that.
They haven't done like a good horror climbing movie. They've done like The Descent. The Descent was awesome, but The Descent's not real. Descent's Alpine, but I'm thinking like on the wall type shit.
I love horror movies in daylight.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Daylight horror movies are great.
Midsommar
is like one of my favorite horror movies ever. Yeah.
So as a dad, what age do you think it would be appropriate for your kid to watch The Shining?
Not up to me. He's just going to watch it secretly. Like 25 maybe? 25.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate.
Maybe like 16, 17? I don't know.
5.
We all did it. That's funny. Like we all got traumatized by these movies, but I don't think it's necessarily matters. I don't know.
You know what's bizarre to me is like I had a real aversion to movies when I was a kid of like amputation happening stuff, like limbs being chopped off. and it still bothers me, but I will watch them now. I will.
It's definitely fun seeing he's 2.5, seeing like how his fear develops, you know, because he's a extremely fearless kid compared to most other kids, especially like, you know, even among his friends and stuff. He's the one who will like go on the slide first. He's the one who go up to somebody. He's like very fearless in that way, but his like different fears are kind of growing in different ways. Like, he used to be terrified of clowns, of like water, of like shadows. And he'll talk about things being scary a lot, like things that he doesn't like. And he'll be like, that's scary. We went to like a movie night last night. We saw Mulan. I don't know if you remember the bad guy in Mulan, but he's so scary. Yeah. And as soon as he saw this guy, he just backed up and walked out of the room. And I was like, no, it's okay. It's okay. It's like,
you think Disney is like all sweet and nice and stuff, but Disney's got some really dark elements to it. I didn't even think about this when my sister and I took our 2-year-old niece to Disney. And we got on Pirates of the Caribbean. I was just thinking, like, oh, it'll be a fun little whatever. And it's a dark ride. She was traumatized. The whole entire rest of the trip, I don't like pirates. I don't like pirates. And then she was scared to get on It's a Small World after that. Yeah. Like, even the Winnie the Pooh ride has like a nightmare sequence in it. Oh, man.
I know.
We have just traumatized our niece for life.
Yeah. I know. I'm always impressed when I watch them now. I guess as a parent, they hit differently emotionally, but they're like, Disney movies tend to have like extreme lows, like parents dying, or they're just so emotional and so much more intense that I remember them. I think they're designed as much, maybe more for parents than even for children.
Oh my gosh.
I think to me now in ways they never even really noticed as a child.
Yeah. It just started streaming on Disney Plus, I think this year. I'd never seen it before until it was started streaming, but Kendall had like a poster when he was a kid. But Ray Bradbury's Something Wicked This Way Comes is one of the creepiest movies I've ever seen in my life. Yeah. And this is for children.
Yeah. Oh, I got to see that. That's with the carousel.
There's several moments where I'm like, I can't believe, you know.
my mother was very angry with my father because my dad, he was like, he'll be fine. It'll be great. And I actually enjoyed all of it, but my mother was not a fan. She was like, that is okay for us. That is not okay for that kid.
Yeah.
But marketed as a kid's movie.
Yeah.
Return to Oz is like the most evil movie ever.
Saw that in the theater, and that messed with me. I was 10. So that was like, oh man.
Your head, dude. Just gonna kick your head in front of a wall.
But I love it now.
Yeah.
That was like, oh, wow, talk about dark.
Yeah. So dark.
Wow.
And a little witch playing the main character, right? What's her name? In The Craft.
Yes, Veruza Balk.
Yeah. Balk.
Crazy. So, Shal, the final question that we always ask on here, and you might have to go back to those early days with your friend watching the VHS tapes, but who is your favorite final person in a horror movie, a survivor?
Favorite final person? Oh, man. And this should be like back in the day movie, or can it be like any movie?
It could be any time. Yeah, we've run the gamut of answers. Yeah, we're always fascinated.
Favorite final person? That's a good question. I'm really trying to think about all of them. I think my favorite, because it's just one of my favorite movies of all time, and I honestly think it might be like maybe in the genre space, like my favorite ending of any movie is The Thing and McCready, right? Like, and I can't remember the other guy's name. But when those two guys like sit down and share a drink at the end of The Thing, they're both kind of like they're final guys. Because I was thinking it's usually a final girl, but they're final guys. There's this inevitability to it, and this tough, resigned guy, and this sort of weird male bonding that happens at the end of it that I find just weirdly moving and so cool. That they both don't know if the other one is going to be a monster or not. They're both dying, and they just share a drink and they start laughing with the flames. And then like that boom, boom comes in. I think to me, that's like the most fucking badass movie I've ever seen. The Thing is definitely my favorite horror movie of all time. And just those being the final guys, I just think it's it's funny because, Control, a lot of my movies actually have like female main characters. The next thing I'm writing also is about a pregnant wife, but there's something about The Thing that I think is really interesting and cool. It is all dudes. It's like a dudes at base, and it's a very like masculine paranoia movie. And I think it's explored in a really cool way. And there's something about those two guys at the end that I connect with. I hope I could be like that in a way. You're saving the world. You don't know, like, this might just be the end. Now you're going to share a drink with this guy and try to have like some humanity in this last moment and kind of like chuckle, because that's just how it is. I don't know. There's something really badass and just rad about the way that movie ends. I think those two are my favorite final guys.
Cool. Do you have a theory as to who's the monster?
I don't think either of them are the monsters, personally. I think they're both human. I think definitely McCready's human. But just like, from the performances, they both just feel so exhausted and so suspicious. And they're not, to me, the monster version would be trying more in some sense to, they're so hopeless in that moment. That's the thing. They're just like, it's over. Maybe you're the monster, maybe I am. But I don't think either of them are, personally.
Okay. I am excited. There's a documentary coming out soon about the making of the thing. And I think everybody who's alive has participated in it. So excited to see that when it comes out.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I have a fun little trivia thing. Because my wife is Norwegian, we rewatched the thing. And the Norwegians at the beginning of the movie give everything away in Norwegian.
Oh.
Because remember when they yell at him? They're like, they tell the whole movie.
Oh, wow.
So Sarah, my wife, is like, yeah, they're telling him that the dog is a monster and it can turn into things and like you have to kill it, but they can't understand him. So it's just,
I love
like, any Norwegian that sees that movie, like when they came out, they'd be like, oh, so the dog is a monster and it can turn into other things.
I love that. We just watched it recently and it was like, why aren't there subtitles for this? That's exactly why.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. I've never heard that before. That's awesome.
Isn't that funny? Yeah.
And we love Norwegian horror too.
Yeah.
Glad that you're getting to explore that.
Definitely.
Well, thank you for taking your time to speak with us, and thank you for being a great independent voice out there.
Thanks for having me. It's great chatting with you.
One of my favorite things Shal said is that horror lets filmmakers hide bigger ideas inside an entertaining story.
You're showing up for monsters, gore, or an impossible itch.
And suddenly you're thinking about anxiety, family pressure, identity, and the expectations we put on ourselves.
That's what great horror has always done. The monster is rarely the point.
It's what the monster represents.
We also loved hearing Shal celebrate practical filmmaking. Big creature effects, animatronics, makeup, people building impossible things with limited time and money.
It reminds us that horror has always been a genre built by creative people figuring it out as they go.
Maybe that's another reason why we love it so much. Horror doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to make you feel something.
We also appreciate filmmakers like Shal who are expanding who gets to be at the center of horror stories. New voices, new perspectives, and new experiences make the genre stronger.
And if this conversation inspires you to revisit The Shining, The Exorcist, or discover an atmospheric black and white vampire movie from 100 years ago,
don't blame us if you start checking behind the shower curtain every morning.
We've been doing that for decades.
Thanks for listening.
And remember, when someone asks, is horror good for mental wellness? You tell them, of course it is. The Horror Heals podcast is produced by Mosaic Multimedia, LLC.